Happy Friday and hello from the San Francisco airport. I apologize if you hear any background noise or anything like that. Tried to find a quiet space, but I don't know how successful it was. Today I want to tell you about what you'll be doing in class, specifically the atomic models timeline. So we've been talking about different atomic theories and the different experiments scientists use to come up with different atomic models, and I want you to put them on a timeline for me today. So what you're going to do is write your name, your class period, and the date on the back of a blank sheet of white paper using the front side only. Create a timeline to show how the model of the atom has changed over time. For each part of your timeline, include a written explanation of what experiments were done and how evidence from that experiment influenced scientists to generate that model of the atom. Your timeline should include at least 3 different models of the atom, starting in ancient times and ending with today. Use color and labels to enhance your models and include key vocab we discussed throughout this lesson. Use this rubric below as a guideline when creating your models. You may use your notes and work with your table partners, but your model should not be identical. And here's a really important point. I'm going to collect your models at the end of the period, or whoever's in class was going to collect them. So I'm reading these instructions straight from your Schoology page. This is under our lesson folder in the application section. This application will be graded and, like I said, collected at the end of the period. You can access the rubric for this application there, and we're going to go over it in a second. One other quick point I want to mention is that with 30 minutes left in the period, you're all going to take a quiz on this material that we've been working on this week. So while you're developing these models, make sure you're reviewing the stuff we talked about and have a good grasp on it so you can take that quiz. Anyway, here's the rubric. First thing I'm going to look at while grading this is your models. Are they drawn accurately and clearly? Second thing is labels. How do I know that those things you're drawing aren't chocolate chip cookies or stars or pancakes or anything like that? That's because your model is going to include a title and label all relevant components. Also, I want you to explain the different experiments and scientists that helped develop that model. What scientists did these experiments and what evidence in those experiments provide to support those models. And also, I want you to use some color. There should be colors in the front of the room to work on this part of the rubric, and make sure it enhances your model. Don't just shade the whole thing blue or something like that. That doesn't strengthen your models at all. And make sure your timeline is pretty properly formatted and well organized. But what the heck does that look like? Let's go over that real quick. So here's my example. Timeline has a beginning and an end. And here I'm going to start with one of my favorite models that was made in 1800 about that year by this dude that we've talked about, John Dalton. So I'm going to title this part of my timeline Dalton's Atomic Model. So just to review, a model is going to show us what an atom looks like according to this scientist. What did an atom look like according to Dalton? It basically looked like a sphere. So he didn't discover anything besides the fact that matter is in fact made of these things called atoms that Democritus started talking about. So his model of the atom is just an atom. And what I'm going to also include for this is a short written explanation, which here is pictured as a squiggly line, that talks about what was Dalton's theory, maybe those 3 major components we talked about in class, and how did he develop his model of the atom as basically a sphere. So here's one example. Feel free to use this example to write your own part for Dalton. And there were 2 more experiments and scientists after Dalton, specifically J.J. Thomson and Ernest Rutherford. So your task is to think about what experiments did they do and what models for atoms did they devise. I would think about the plum pudding model and the nuclear model. So just like I did for Dalton's atomic model, include what Thomson and Rutherford came up with. Make sure you draw their models, label the components, and explain how they came up with it based on evidence from their experiments. Have a nice weekend.